Black Cat Lounge is sponsored by Beacon, a home for those who have a passion for filmmaking and the unusual. The Haunted Hinsdale House. Those who walk there do not walk alone. Paraware, apparel for the action-seeking paranormal investigator. Dragonfly art and soul for all of your magical, metaphysical, and spiritual needs. Mystery Control, your go-to feed for science, magic, true crime, the paranormal, and so much more. Para-Niagara, one of the top rated destinations in Western New York. The Black Cat Lounge is part of the Paraflix Entertainment Network. Everybody, welcome. It's a Tuesday night, and here you are at the Black Cat Lounge. We've got a fantastic show. I'm going to tell you why, because it's something that I'm so interested in, and I think that you're going to be interested in it. And our guest is just a fantastic lady. Talked to her last night, and I was amazed. So we're going to talk about that in a little bit. But I want to thank everybody for coming out to the Foresight Tavern for my class of Paranormal blah, blah, blah 101, and you guys did a little bit of an investigation there. It's not the fact that you came out for the class. It's the fact that you came out and donated to a great cause for preservation. And the 3 classes and events that we did this year for them, we raised a substantial amount of money for them, and it goes directly to the upkeep. Nothing, 100% doesn't, goes into their coffers. I get nothing. Everybody that really came got a chance to go and have fun with it. We did the Victorian morning rituals and practices talk. We did a dowsing class. We did a para class. I'm looking to do something else. We're talking about possibly having a formal seance there, complete with a meal, just like they did, the early 1900s. So it's going to be interesting. Stay tuned. We'll figure that out. That's all we're going to go. Now, I want to thank everybody that's come on board. And remember, Paraflix is a phenomenal streaming system that will go and not just have our show on it, but we have all sorts of other things. We have documentaries, we have music videos, we have all sorts of independent stuff. So check them out. Go over them, check them out, because they are, worthwhile. Also, just in today, yours truly will be in Gettysburg, Pennsylvania in September. We're going to do a seance class. With the seance, we're going to do a couple ghost hunts, and we're going to talk about haunted objects. So we're going to be down there for 2 days, and there's going to be 4 little events that we're going to do. And Gettysburg is always a phenomenal place. You guys know it. I know it. Take the time to break away from your ghost hunting love and actually understand a little bit of what the battlefield was like, what the sacrifices were like, and the importance of it. So guys, try to do that. Now, everybody knows that my Black Beauty, my old Scooby-Doo van or truck just died. After 105,000 miles, my truck gave up the ghost. It just died. Nothing I could do about it. So we bought my lovely wife, Nancy, a new vehicle, and I got the hand-me-down. It's great. The air conditioning works in it. I don't have to worry about the floor panels falling out. Life is good. And guess what? We're going to be on the road. So we're going to be doing some new content. I'm going to be doing some solo work where we go to different events. We go to different places, and we do some interviews with some really fun and cool people. Hopefully, we're looking at the Buckland Museum of Witchcraft and Magic in Cleveland. And you guys know that I knew the late Ray Buckland. And it's a special place for me, and I really love going there. So we're going to talk about that in a little bit. So enough about me. Enough about what's going on in the world. Enough about the heat wave that is engulfing us and making yours truly melt. Although I have to say that down here in my office, I've got a bit of a chill. That's all I'm going to say. I got a little bit of a chill, but it's a it's a good thing. So if you see me shiver, it's not because I'm afraid. It's because it is cold here. But anyway, we have a great guest. I have to read it, and I have to bring it up because my eyesight is not that good anymore. But anyway, I want to read this. I have nothing but admiration for tonight's guest, and that's a true thing. She is one of the founders of Epoch Preservation, whose specialty is the rejuvenation and repair of historic and older burial grounds and monuments and that sort of thing. And we're going to talk a lot about that tonight. And she's up in the New England area. She's actually lives in a place that my relatives came from, the New England area. And, as a lot of you guys know, Salem used to be a second home for me because my relatives lived in Dorchester, down a little bit down the coast, but in Maple at the my God, my head just stopped. Anyway, I lived there. My relatives actually lived across the bay from them, so it's a great place, And you guys know that I'm a volunteer at Concordia Cemetery here in Western New York, and I've been on a few digs. I've loved them. I absolutely love them, and I wanted to let everybody know how important it is to go. And I'm just going to preach just a couple things. Just let everybody know how important it is to go out there and volunteer someplace. And these cemeteries really need, these historic sites, historic cemeteries really need the volunteer, muscle, power, brain trust. Everything that you can do is a great thing to do. But our guest tonight, her company does wonders. I've got some overlays. I've got some slides today because you guys are not going to believe what they do. They work magic. We're going to make her put her fingers up like this so everybody sees the magic that comes out of her fingers because of all the work that she does. But really, what her company does is so important because it brings back to the humanity. The humanity comes back to that person who is buried in that ground. And that's something that's so important to me. And a lot of you guys know, with being an ancestor, or one of my ancestors was in the Civil War. Actually, quite a few of them were in the Civil War. I do have a really deep respect for that. So please, everybody, let's welcome the one and only, the brainchild, the woman who puts it all together. We don't know how she does it. Rachel Meyer. Rachel, how are you? It's so good to see you.
I'm good, Tim. Would you like my magic right up front?
Right up front. We're not going to fool around. Right up front. Everybody wants to see. I'm just gonna say this, Rachel. I've seen you. I've seen photos of you in the field. You can't have any nails left. They've got to be all broken from your hands being so deep into the soil.
Yes.
Oh my
They
God.
are. I mean, between that and being a guitarist, I definitely don't have particularly attractive fingers and fingernails.
Oh my God. Why God? That's right. You are multifaceted, and that's what that's what something I really I kind of preach that, because too many people become obsessed in one thing and they miss the rest of the world. And you're so multifaceted that's why I thought that you're just a fascinating person, and you have that musical background. So it's a great thing. But wait a minute. Let's talk about your company, Epoch Preservation. Tell everybody what it is, what it does, and the importance of it.
Yeah, so we're a gravestone conservation business north of Boston. We serve everywhere from Rhode Island up to coastal New Hampshire. And what we do is we work with cities and towns and individuals and organizations to plan the restoration of their historic burial sites and then carry out the restoration of the gravestones inside of them.
Now, do they go? Now I have to ask you, because I know up here in Western New York, most of the historic burial sites are all privately owned. They become corporate, they're part of corporations, and the corporations up here will reach out to preservationists and that sort of thing as they have the money to be able to do it. Is that the way they contact you, or do you go out, and I'm not going to say fishing for business, but do you ever go out and, kind of go and say, hey, maybe we can go and we can help you?
We're lucky in Massachusetts in that we have something called the Community Preservation Act, which is a
Mhm.
certain amount of homeowners' taxes go into a pool that can be used for affordable
Mhm.
housing and can be used for historic preservation. So it's not really hard for me to go to a site, and normally they come to me, but most of our sites are owned by municipalities. So it's very easy for us to fund our work and just go to a site and say, hey, we're willing to, work with you on this grant and, come up with a plan. And, you know, at first it was a fight. Like I make it sound easy, but it's only easy because we fought so hard to make it easy. But at first it was definitely going into sites that were neglected and having confrontations sometimes with cities and not feeling very popular at first, but people have come around to the idea and they happily embrace us now. So
That's fantastic because it's something that I've always wondered because I do know that a lot of times, well, it's hard. I not to downgrade our wonderful local governments, but the preservation of burial grounds are like is like just you know it's like fifth, sixth, seventh on their list of where the money should be going. A lot of it, many times goes to and don't get me wrong, the arts are very important, or other things, like new sidewalks. But I think it's great, and I think that it should be something that should be universal around the United States, that we can go and we can protect these things. What's the time era roughly now here in Western New York? For the most part, we talk about early 1800s, and that's our burial grounds. Now, you guys go back quite a bit.
yeah, the oldest gravestone I've worked on dates to 1647.
Wow.
And it's the oldest in Massachusetts. It's called the EL Stone, and it's here in Ipswich where we're based. And yeah, so we're dealing with very, very old stones, and they are my preferred gravestones to work on because they're
Why?
so antiquated.
Do you find that it's hard? The older they are, the harder it is to be able to go and save them and fix them and repair them to their proper grace and dignity.
It's less about their age as much as the material that they're made of, right? So you can have some newer gravestones made out of like sandstone or marble that are like
Right.
very porous that break apart. And then you can have some 350-year-old fine slate that looks brand new once you put it together. So it's really less about age and it's more about the decisions that the carvers made when they chose the materials they carved with.
Locally, and we talked off the air about this, we do have a lot of, in this area, Western New York, Medina sandstone, which becomes very, very porous, and it's like slate. It will start to go and separate. I see a lot of veterans monuments and memorials that are having a lot of problems, and they're not that old. I believe, I think they're made out of marble, isn't it? Now they don't. I don't think the Veterans Administration does that anymore. I think now they might be
Yeah.
on a footer and then uses brass, but on the marble pieces that become that porous, can this be redone, or does it have to be re-etched, or can that be protected in some way?
Our preference is always to save a gravestone as opposed to replace it. So what you're describing is what's called sugaring. And so
Right.
sugaring is when water moves through a gravestone and it leaches out the silica content from the stone. So the way that you stop it, and you can't reverse it, but you can stop it, is to reintroduce the silica content back into the stone, which is called consolidation. So we can do that with marble and with sandstone and to a lesser degree with schist. So all of these porous stones, anything that, slate, granite, they don't sugar because they are non-porous
Right.
for the most part. And so they don't have the water sort of pushing out their mineral content. So anything where that happens, we can consolidate it. It's a little toxic, but it's a good tool to have, to stop the erosion.
Let me ask you this: Are there? I know here in Western New York, just from my little my little foray in down the rabbit hole. When I started thinking about this. I know here that we do have certain legalities that we have to follow when we go and we do any kind of work. It's not just corporate rules or regs that we have to follow, but it's almost legal. State actually, there's state laws and state regulations. Massachusetts is it much the same as that?
It is, but there isn't a lot of oversight. Like I'm sure there isn't really in most of the country.
Yeah.
There are definitely like a set of standards we have to abide by, and different sites depending on if they've been legally protected in the past by preservationists, have different rules. So we adhere to a law that isn't always enforced. It's more of a moral code at this point, that you're going to do things correctly and properly document everything you have, so that Mass Historical or whomever can come and look at your work afterwards and know what you did. And so yeah, you can't just go out there, right? Like and do whatever you want, but largely people do, and that's why you have such a quality control issue in a lot of areas.
Well, this is something that I found that happens. Unfortunately, you have people that are so well-meaning, and this happened, I know, in the 70s and early 80s, big time. They're very well-meaning, and of course, we do know how mold and pollution discolors these monuments, and they took bleach to them.
Right.
And my friend here, Jason, says, "Are you able to use D2 on the stones that old?" So, I mean, what I'd like to ask you is, I know D2 is a specialized cleaner, but how do you go and is there a way to, after, if they've been damaged because of bleach, is there a way that we can revitalize them, or is it just now it's scarred for life?
It's pretty scarred for life. I mean, you could do what I said before, which is consolidate them. So the reason why you can't use bleach, you can't use anything with salts. That's an ionic situation that you're trying to avoid. As salts, bleach, chlorine, chloride, things like that you want to avoid, is because that the salts get into the pores of the stone and start crystallizing and breaking it apart. So really, it's another situation where you have to consolidate. You're creating an eroded, situation, and we use D2 or the equivalent. There are a lot of quaternary ammonium products out there like D2. So we use D2 or the equivalent to, get the worst of it off, and then allow the weather to work with the D2 to sort of overfeed the lichen and kill it, and, clean it off naturally. Well, not naturally, but with the weather.
Now,
On any age stone.
Now, oftentimes, I found when we were out in the field, and again, it's really an amazing thing. I have to ask you, after seeing just the burial books and records at so many of the different little cemeteries, do you ever find anything that's a little suspect? Now, I just want to. I'm not going to mention a local cemetery that this happened to, but when there was a federal cleanup of some waterway ditches and overflows and that sort of thing, that they went and as they were digging the ditch, they actually came across a couple burials that were not recorded. And it was a Catholic cemetery, and basically the diocese said, just cover them up and don't make a big deal out of it. Did you ever come across something like that where you're working on something and then all of a sudden it's like, well, wait a minute, there's another stone here, we found something else here?
Constantly. There's hardly ever a job where I don't find something unexpected, but the situation that you're describing actually falls under our state law, which is, say I'm digging in a cemetery and I come across bones, I come across a burial, and I just stop. I just don't dig anymore. that is one thing. That's not something that you would need to contact anybody about because you're in a cemetery, right? That is expected.
Right.
But if you're like on state land or somewhere that you don't expect there to be a burial, like a parking lot, or sometimes people are digging to create a building or whatever, and they come across a giant African American burying ground. This happens frequently. That's actually
Hmm.
something that you by law need to report to Mass Historical Commission here in Massachusetts. So these are two totally different situations where you're in a place where you expect to find remains, or you're in a place where you're
Right.
like, wait a second, that's what's this
Well,
guy doing here,
well, I know so many times here in the Buffalo, New York area where people were going and see a lot of the burial grounds the as the city grew, they dug up the remains and put them in larger, well, I'll just call them, for a lack of a better term, ossuaries in a larger cemetery.
Mhm.
But every so often they'll be going and they start finding and you're doing road work, you're digging up, boom, you find 3 or 4 graves. Fort Niagara, that I used to be a volunteer at, was one of those places that you never knew what you were going to find if you started digging. And
Yeah.
and the gas lines, you would run into burials and that sort of thing. But all I know is from a friend of mine who has done archaeological work, that the minute that you find something that is suspect, stop. You have to stop immediately.
Yeah, just stop.
Stop, and that's it. That's it.
Hard
Although,
to stop, but you gotta stop.
well, I'm fascinated by it. So it would be brutal for me to try to stop that because
It's
I'd be going.
hard.
It's like, oh my God, look at this, and you're like, okay, stop.
Oh, I know. I found a coffin handle. Was the rest of the coffin there? I know it is painful, but you just have to. So in my line of work, if I were to hit something like a shallow burial, I have to just stop and then move my work a few inches away because that's obviously not where the gravestone went. It didn't go
Right,
on top of the grave shaft. It went at the head of the grave shaft. So I
right,
just move it like 4 inches. I take that as the indication to just put the dirt back and repair it 4 or 6 inches out from where I hit the grave shaft. So that stuff does happen, and um, yeah, just stop.
well, that's a big thing that happens on national park easements, uh, because there were so many, like during the American Civil War, there were so many graves, so many temporary graves, and later on, and I know there's a great book out. It's called, oh my God, it was by James Coco, but he's talking about uh, these shallow graves that people keep finding bones from, but all the major bones are gone. And at the Antietam National Battlefield Park, during the easement, some people found what they thought originally were burials, and they they started digging, and of course the Smithsonian came in, their anthropological department came in, and they found that indeed they were the partial burials, the partial remains of bodies, and because they used to pay the farmers $10 a skull or something, and they just take the big bones out and they leave the rest. And
Mm,
that's totally fascinating that you have to, and to me, I would be like, oh my God, this is unbelievable. But it's a good thing that there are people like yourself and actually myself. I hate to say, who actually do follow the laws, because I know as a relic collector, I know that I've been offered human remains, bones
mm.
in the past for sale for collections, and that's just kind of reprehensible when we start thinking about that.
Well, we had something happen here recently at Harvard where the morgue was selling human remains to like crafters and but I mean donated human remains. So it's not something that
Right.
doesn't still happen. Of course, the person in charge there was like publicly shamed, and I'm sure
Yeah.
Harvard does not do that right now. But there's a market for these things, and I tread lightly about talking about it, but it's a pretty clear line about what is okay and what is not okay to
Right.
sell or buy, in my mind, which is kind of leads into the bill, right, that I have that is to prevent the sale of gravestones and other cemetery objects, which aren't meant to be ephemeral, as
Right.
opposed to like the selling of like a funeral card, which is ephemeral. The
Right.
selling of parts of somebody's gravestone or parts of a plot or the flag holders or anything like that that the family put in perpetuity is a much different conversation than the selling of a mourning ring or things that were
Right.
meant to be out amongst the
Right.
people. So, you know,
It's fun. It's funny, Rachel, because I collect oddities. I collect unusual things. And the one thing that I will never collect is human remains and of course post-mortem photography. I just won't do it because I just
yeah.
feel that it's unethical to have that because that should have stayed within the family. But everything else, is kind of fair game with it. Now, I gotta ask you this. Oh, Jason wants to know. Here we go, Jason. Is there a certain type of brush that you use for headstone clearing? I'm going to be honest with you. For my kit, I went out to the dollar store and I bought the softest polyester one brush that I could hand brush that I could
Yeah.
find. But do you have anything that you could like recommend with it?
So I think the more that you work on gravestones, the more you develop your own personal favorite brushes. And like, I'm with you. I love a good Dollar Tree brush. And I just do. They do the job for me. And what you're describing, the soft acrylic as opposed to that like almost like barbecue grill brush,
Right,
for
right.
me is like totally it. But I know my business partner loves Tampico brushes, which are like for brushing horses. So he'll like buy Tampico brushes from like the equestrian shop and I don't like them and he loves them. So it's really as long as it's soft, you don't want something with like a lot of dyes in it.
Mhm.
Like if you're going to work with you know, marble, nothing that's going to transfer color. The same thing with sponges. If you use sponges, just stay away from things that are very artificial.
Right.
But yeah, I like a good Dollar Tree $1.25 brush.
No, you know what? You made my day. You made my day now, Rachel, because I feel so good because all of my tools just about came from estate sales or the Dollar Tree. So
Yeah,
I'm
no,
very happy with
same.
that.
Yeah, I'm not a brush snob. When I teach workshops, it's all like Dollar Tree brushes and buckets, and people will find their own. As long as it's like a soft brush, people will figure out their own preference, and
Mhm. Now, I've got to go, and I have to ask you, and I've got, and I we talked about it beforehand. The selling of objects, the selling of pieces of mortuary and tombstones and these type of objects. And let me I just want to highlight something.
Mm.
This was for sale, and everybody, if you can see it, it's the top part of a tombstone, and this was at an auction site. So,
Yeah,
you know, what do you do when you see these things? Now, I know I have a good friend who's like an eBayer. He is like the king of all eBayers, and
yeah,
he is a he's an oddities collector. But what he does is he doesn't think twice about turning these people in and
yeah,
contacting eBay saying, "Hey, listen, this is not right. This should not be sale." Or if he knows if it's not like, well, you can't sell body parts on eBay, but a lot of other auction sites, we won't mention the names, you can buy skulls and pieces
right.
of bone. He will go, and if he knows that they're not ethically sourced, I mean, he will turn them in, and so this way they won't sell. What happens when you see something like this and you know it belongs in one of the burial sites where you're working?
Yeah, I know. It's a real like moment because I know I have a certain responsibility to act on it. I can't just look the other way.
Right,
And it
right.
happens so frequently that it's like, oh, the confrontational part of the part of me that does not like confrontation is like, oh, here we go. I'm
Yeah.
gonna get in there. But like, but in that case, it was being auctioned off as part of an estate of a fairly famous person
Mhm.
and that person was elderly and was moved into an assisted living type of place. And my thought is that the family just was like, and we'll auction off the rest.
Right.
And that ended up in that auction, not necessarily because of some evil intention, more out of ignorance, but
Right.
it had no business not being in the burying ground. That specifically came from our town in Ipswich. And Ipswich is a town that still has all of its footstones. Like, there's no chance that the town of Ipswich ever would be like, here, take this gravestone. There's no,
Right.
it's just not the way this town is. It's like, considered one of the best preserved towns in America. So, it was very clear to me that that was a case of it not being above board. Anything that is that old, in my mind, is not above board, in a sense, because our perspective has changed on what's important. That's something that may have been above board 200 years ago. Here, take this gravestone. We may regret now. You know what I mean? So I think whether it's illegal, there's a moral question of, I have this very old gravestone. Shouldn't I, even if it was legally obtained, maybe approach the town and say, here's part of your heritage. Would you like it back? So it isn't
Exactly.
all about legality. Sometimes it's about doing the right thing, which
I
is
agree.
keeping it the heritage and the historic site going.
I
But in
agree.
that case, it's a Massachusetts stone that was being auctioned in New Hampshire, where there's a law that prevents that. And so that's how I was able to save it. So that's why I'm trying to enact a law here in Massachusetts that does the same thing as that law in New Hampshire that stopped that. So
That's amazing. Now I have the magic that you guys did with that stone. I want to show everybody because
mm,
it's I'm just so impressed by it. This is
yeah,
absolutely beautiful. And how difficult was that to fit? Did you as someone who has like been a flint knapper who has reproduced uh old stone points and stuff, I know it's really tough to be able to go and fit pieces together, and sometimes you have to go and you have to kind of grind things out and try to strengthen them in different ways. Was that one of those places? Was that one of those projects that was just hard to do, or was it
no,
something that really?
not for us. I mean, we do some pretty wild stuff. That was two fragments that we readhered together, and then we created a prosthetic lower half. So if you show it
Oh,
again,
okay.
the bottom of that gravestone that you're looking at is the prosthetic. It's not an original
Oh,
part. It's actually yawn for bluestone. It's yawn is a restoration mortar that you need to be certified to even buy. Lithium-X is something you don't need to be certified to buy. It's not quite as strong as yawn. But so that is us taking the top pieces, which were saved from the auction, creating a mold, and then creating a prosthetic lower half and using that as the bottom to put in the ground.
that's amazing. That's amazing. It
Yeah.
I was looking at that thinking to myself, all the pieces that we have found at Concordia, and we start looking at that, and I all I could think of is, how the heck did you fit that together with it
Yeah.
looking so beautiful and like it was? So that makes a lot of sense. And that is something that's just so important. People don't realize that, again, what you've done, you rescued heritage. You really
And
did.
it was easy to locate where it went because the headstone was still in the ground. It wasn't hard for me to figure it out. I know that carver. I know that was carved by the Lampsons. I know the motif with the acanthus leaves belongs to Caleb Lampson, and I know exactly what his headstones looked like. So it wasn't hard to
Wow.
figure out that James Foster's footstone belonged with this particular James Foster
That's
because it's the
amazing.
same carver.
That's amazing. Now, we talked off the air, and I have got a photograph of something that I just shake my head at, because sometimes we will go and the ground penetrating radar that we use will pick up, a signal, and when we go in there and we start excavating and we start pulling back the layers of dirt, the stone is shattered. It's just shattered. And let me just show everybody what you guys sometimes have to deal with.
Mhm.
this is amazing to me because I'm looking at this and I can actually relate to seeing this, something like that. And what we'll do is, I mean, we geotag it so we know that in the future, if somebody has that skill to be able to put it back together or whatever, they know where it is. Also, we also know every location, and we try to make sure that sometimes we have to replant it. As much as we all hate to do it, sometimes that's the best way to do it. Now, I have to ask you, were you guys able to save this stone? Everybody, take a look at this. This is,
Yeah.
oh my God. First of all, how long did it take? Was it like a jigsaw puzzle?
Mhm.
And when you were done, is it? I'm gonna ask you plainly. Is it better than what? Will it withstand? The wrath of time and weather.
It will. And I think that I'm trying to figure out how to share an after. I don't have the after ready. I wish I knew in advance. I would have given you the after photo. Um, so I believe that's Grace Dennis's stone. I can't read the name on it, but I believe Grace Dennis was the wife of the famous cabinet maker Thomas Dennis. His work is like all in the Smithsonian and in a lot of museums. He was
Wow.
one of America's earliest cabinet makers here in Ipswich, and so a really important, part of our legacy. And I know that a lot of people love showing off that particular section because of how important his craftsmanship was to, our early American, craft industry. And so that's a gravestone that was shattered. You talked about how gravestones come apart, right?
Correct.
That's
Yes.
called delamination. So sometimes when something is struck, either by a lawnmower or a tree, it also comes apart in this delaminated sort of way. And that's why you find all those separated sherds all in the ground. And so there were hundreds of them. So what we do is we go through all of them, clean them up, photograph them, and then we try to find the ones that have carving on them. We
Hmm.
prioritize anything with carving. And then because we can't arduously piece it back together, because a lot of it's going to still be missing, there's no way to solve that puzzle in a way that you're using every single piece. What we do is we rebury in front of it anything that is not usable, and we photograph it and we send it to the town. We say, hey, this is where we buried these fragments. And so anything that is missing that we deemed unusable, we infill with restoration mortar. So again, we're doing a lot of prosthesis in our work where we're taking what we can use, the things that are important, like the carving,
Hmm.
and we're trying to preserve that. And then everything else just gets buried. It goes right back into the ground.
That's amazing. Just the fact that you guys are able to save the carving is is
Yeah.
is amazing because I've seen so many of these that have just fallen apart. They've just crumbled. And I think to myself, if only there was some way to be able to go and save it. I've never considered that. I've never considered how you guys are able to go and almost sandwich it and put it together.
Yeah.
Now, the mortar that you're using, now that will withstand weather, and I know New England weather is always,
Yeah.
it's not the snow that always got me in New England. It was the winds and and the hail that I used to go and just shake my head at. So that's crazy. Now there's something
Yeah.
else that we talked off the air that was very, very important. Now I have a couple pieces that I was able to salvage out of a cemetery dumpsters, and they're Grand Army of the Republic flag markers, and most of these would be put on Civil War veteran sites by
Mhm.
Grand Army of the Republic, which is a Union Veterans organization. And what I found is a lot of cemeteries, they would get broken or whatever, and they throw them out. They put them in a scrap pile. So I was able to get them out of there. But we've been able, the Sons of Union Veterans I belong to, we go and we replace the stars and that. But again, I mean, we just kind of take them and put them in put them in a box in our, where we have our meetings and kind of put them there. But tell everybody what you guys do. I think this is amazing because this is what I'm going to be doing from here on in.
With the flag holders?
Yeah.
Normally with the flag holders, so The flag holders are metal, so we're not metal conservators. But I
Right.
always find that the best way to conserve those flag holders, because they do kind of rust,
Yes.
is to rust convert them. So to clean them off really well. Do you know what rust converter is?
Yes. Yes.
It's like a tannin. So it's like also not something pleasant to work with. But we do the same thing with those that we do with like cemetery gates that are starting to rust. Is you rust convert them, you clean them off really well with like a wire brush. You got to be
Mhm.
careful. Rust convert them and then paint them with a high gloss black, not necessarily the flag holders because those were never painted,
Right.
but
Right.
you can definitely conserve those and put them back in the ground. I'm not even divided about, like, sometimes I will find a flag holder under the ground in a grave that it clearly didn't belong to because it was the grave of someone's wife. It wasn't the
Hmm.
soldier's grave. It was not, this person clearly did not serve in any war, except for, you know,
The home front. Yes.
the war at home. And I am not even conflicted about redistributing those to graves that um, have lost their flag holders.
Let's see a lot. What I'm going to do from here on in was your your great suggestion. When we go and replace these, we'll buy a brand new one because Sons of Union veterans have, the reproductions that we can buy. We're going to bury them on the site of the soldier,
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
and then we're going to go and replace them. And I think that's a fantastic way of doing it. And I believe it's really an honor to be able to save that. So I think that's great. Now we talked. You're talking a little bit about conserving and repairing like fences and and gates. Let me
Mhm.
ask you this: have you ever worked on a mausoleum? Have you ever had to go and do conservatorship on a mausoleum?
Only on doors. We'll do doors to
Uh huh.
different tombs, but that's actually more for an architect. Those things can be pretty dangerous if
Oh
they're
no,
not done
yeah.
correctly. So we have the equipment to like do tomb doors, which we do frequently,
Hmm. Well, see,
but
that's
I
something
love
that.
them.
Well, I'm fascinated by them, and of course, I mean, doing what I do and the interests that I do have, the inevitably we run into so many different types of mausoleums and all the different problems that arise, especially if they're in water soaked areas and that sort of thing. But I mean, the doors always seem to just like be destroyed. Now I don't know why. What is it because it's just metal and metal just degrades over time, or is it something
Mhm.
else? It's that always fascinates me.
Yeah, so we do a lot of doors that are made of marble. And what happens with those is sometimes they'll have a locking mechanism in them or some sort of a bolt
Mhm.
that's or a hinge. And whenever you have a material that is connected to a softer material, you're
Yes.
creating a bit of a problem. So, say the tube falls out of plumb,
Yeah.
right? Then
Right.
you're creating pressure on a metal area that also
Yeah.
has like a hole drilled into it and it'll
Yes.
crack
Yes.
through the door. So sometimes we're able to repair it, and other times the whole tomb needs to be righted, and that's a little bit beyond us. That's more of
Well,
a
that's a
monument
that
company.
that's Mason work there. That's some that's hard,
Yeah,
that's some hardcore stuff to try to put
yeah,
that
that
back
needs some
together.
engineering.
I wouldn't even try to think about that. L-
No.
let me ask you this. This is something that I often wonder about. Now, when they call you in, do they bring you in just for sections, or do they now Concordia Cemetery and a lot of the cemeteries up here, they have over 17,000 residents. That would almost be impossible. That would be a lifetime. That would be a lifetime contract. What's the most or the biggest area that you've ever worked on?
Well, we just did a gravestone assessment, which is where we go in and we assess the
Uh-huh.
gravestones and come up with a plan for on a site that was 50,000 gravestones in Salem called Harmony
Wow.
Grove, and it's so beautiful. It's such, but it took 3 months,
Wow.
and basically the report we gave them was what was called the priority ones. So things that are broken, heavily leaning, dangerous, or completely missing. And that report ended up being close to 1,000 pages.
Wow.
It's like a epic book,
Wow.
EPOCH book.
That's
And
amazing.
like, but as far as the repairs go, when we're hired, sometimes we're hired to repair entire sites, so hundreds of gravestones, and we do them over like years. And
That's
I
amazing.
love it when we're called in to restore an entire place because you get such a dramatic before and after.
Oh, I can't even
Yeah.
imagine. I can't imagine because I know that just being able to go and just doing landscaping at a cemetery, how dramatic it can make everything change and how everything can be just, you walk in there. Oh, okay. On that note, Miss Rachel,
Yeah.
jobs, when you're out there and you're working on these things,
Mhm.
have you ever gone and been like, wow, this is something that is so important. This is something that I'm giving back history, something I'm giving back to this person who actually lived on this earth 100 years ago. Have you ever had that like overwhelming feeling? Because I know I have. I'm not going to lie, I have. But have you ever had that? And what was the circumstances? Because I just had it on just a normal person's burial. We had found just a marker that had said baby, nothing more, and it just sat there, and I was just overwhelmed with that. What did you ever have an experience like that?
I have those experiences when like a descendant approaches me and gets very emotional about something that I did. I recently repaired the grave of two enslaved women, and the people
Wow.
who discovered the grave watched as Josh and I repaired it, and they cried. And, I was like, this is really emotional for them. I can be a little desensitized because I have to focus on what I'm doing. And I
Correct.
also just want to get as much done as I possibly can. Like, if I really stop and think about the stories of every grave that I repair, that's time away from repairing the next one. So I'm a little bit less emotional unless somebody around me, because I'm very empathetic, is showing emotion. And then I'm like, here, grab the shovel, like, come help. Like, I know this is going to be really meaningful for you if you tamp the ground or you put the dirt back in or you hold the like,
Right.
I try to involve
Right.
people as much as I can if I particularly know that it's going to be meaningful and special to them.
Do you ever bring on interns or volunteers? Because I know you have a
Yeah.
staff.
Yeah, we have interns that usually come from our local art college, and I really adore them. Like we were talking before, these 23-year-old interns I have are running on a different type of battery than I'm running on. And I could appreciate it more, you know?
Yeah, I sit there and I think to myself, what was I doing at that age? And I'm going, yeah, I had more energy then. That's just
Yeah.
we just can't keep up with it. But I give you credit for getting out there and doing it. When you really, I mean, do you guys use a lot of like block and tackles, or is a lot of what you do? Are you able to go and handwrite them? Because we've been able to go and if they're not like obelisks or something of that nature, we're able to go and reset them on the foundations. Have you ever had anything that big where you've needed a little bit more oomph in order to get it up and
Yeah.
uprighted?
Yeah. We use a chain hoist quite frequently. So we have a 2-ton chain hoist that we built ourselves.
Mhm.
And we love pulling out the chain hoist. We think it's a real showstopper. If we have the chain hoist out, we mean business. If we're in a cemetery like in downtown Salem where there's 1,000 people coming through, when we bring out our tripod, we know that traffic is going to stop. you know.
I love that. I love
Yeah.
it because I mean I've worked with them in the past, and I mean I have to say that they are fun. And when you are able to get that, when you're able to get a monument up, or you're able to go and get something that's that heavy moved, it's like at the end of it, you go, "Wow, I can't believe that it actually worked." This
Yeah, I get how the pyramids were built now. Yeah.
yeah, really, really. I got to ask you, classes. Do you ever offer classes? Do you ever offer anything to for people to let's say someone who is involved as like a volunteer and is interested in doing what you do correctly, not just somebody going out there like a fly by night. Do you ever
Yeah.
have classes?
We used to do it all the time. I used to almost have weekly workshops to teach people things like gravestone cleaning and simple resetting.
Mm-hmm.
But now our business is just so busy. Like it's hard to stay on top of it. And I'm actually finding that the summer weather has become so unpredictable
Mm-hmm.
that it's hard to schedule the classes and not know if it's going to be rained out or too hot for people or whatever. So when I do hold them, I hold them in the fall, or I'll hold them for organizations like the St. Gravestone assessment we just did for Harmony Grove. They also hired us to teach a workshop as part of it, because we don't think that you should hire us necessarily to just clean gravestones, right? That can be done by volunteers an
Right.
awful lot of the time, um, with some exceptions, but we're always open to teaching volunteers how to clean on the sites that we're assessing, so that they can, just hire us to do the harder stuff. But I wish it's probably the most frequently asked question I get. And it's I always feel sorry and like disappointed that I can't offer them at the frequency that I used to offer them. And it's strictly because we are so booked, and that's a good
It's a
problem
good
to
thing.
have.
It's a great
Yeah,
problem to have. No,
it
but
is.
it's just something that have you ever thought? Let me throw this at you. Do you
Mm,
ever think about creating a book or a manual on how to do this?
I have. And I'm not somebody who has a lot of time to write, but I'm open to getting help writing a book or a manual.
Well, I think
Like
well, I actually think it's pretty important because this is something
yeah,
that so many people are again. I am so worried about how people clean the graves, and I also and again, I've seen the damage that can be done with all these by not using the proper solutions. And I think that it would be a phenomenal thing for those people out there to be able to sit down and actually read something and do it properly rather than
yeah.
haphazard.
In the interim, because people so I actually got into this because I wrote a book, right? I wrote a novel where the
I
last
didn't
chapter.
know that. I did not
Yeah.
know that.
So I wrote a novel kind of for NaNoWriMo, and I have such profound ADHD that unless it was one of those write it in a month things, I probably would never have written a novel. But I'm able to hyper focus for a month on a novel. And the last chapter of it was set in a burying ground. And I was like, oh, I need some inspiration. So I Googled historic burying ground Gloucester, and it brought me to my first site, which was so overgrown that I couldn't walk in. Like it was
Right.
wild.
Right.
And so that's how I started, was by writing a novel. So I mean, it's not like I can't do it. I obviously write these giant gravestone assessment books every year. But in the interim between now and whenever that first book is published, um, there is a wonderful resource. It's Lynette Strangstadt's The Gravestone Preservation Primer Edition 2. Has like some really good updated information, some very common sense info on how to save graveyards.
That's amazing. That's amazing. I'm going to be looking it up myself now
Yeah, it's a
because
good book.
I'm very I'm very motivated for it, and this is great. Well, we got to have one more photo of you. You know that we haven't put it
Oh,
up there because I want everybody to know we were talking about her nails before the
oh,
show, or I should say, lack of
lack of nails.
nails
Yeah,
before the show because she's not only a conservator, but she's also a guitarist. But this is her in action. This is our Rachel in action right there. And this way you can tell, this way you can know that she's the real deal, and she's out there and she's boots on the ground, hands on, and rock and rolling and ready to go with it. I give you so much credit for that, because
I mean, we're half kidding, but the week before conservation season starts, I'm like, this is the end of pretty nail season, because you don't want pretty painted nails. If you're working with gravestones, you don't want to accidentally get bright red nail polish on a marble gravestone and have to acetone it off. So there is a week just before, in March, where I'm like, see you later, pretty nails. There they go.
Just a quick question. How long does it take per, let's say we just have something that is just in the ground and you're going to conserve it, versus something that where you have to build it, as in that one where you took the writing and was able to go and create a new stone?
Yeah, it's a matter of how long it takes to set up. That mortar takes like a week. So we are currently working on a few at Charter Street in Salem that needed prosthetic pieces, and the entire weight is just waiting for the mortar to set up. It's if I had all the pieces, like some of the other repairs that we are doing there, and you just boop, 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 you put them right back together. It takes a day or two, but these ones are just, it's a matter of also like matching the color of the mortar, and so it can take weeks, but it's not a continuous work. It's just,
I never thought about that, matching the color of mortar, because it's almost like bonding teeth, where you have to go and you have all the different colors and of teeth. I never thought of that. That's, to me, that's fascinating. That's probably why when I go into cemeteries that are older and I look at these graves and I think to myself, how did they survive this long? Actually, what happened is somebody like you came in and took the time to match the actual mortar to the existing tombstone. That's
as
amazing.
best as we can. I have this sort of these. So mortar can change colors depending on the finish. So if you have a really smooth finish, it's a little darker than if you have a rough finish on your mortar. Right. So I have this color pack that is little samples of smoothed and rough. And I just go and I just try to match it to the stone. And then I can order custom mortar from Lithomex. They have a lot of different colors. And I've never done this, you could take a photo and they will custom match your mortar for you. But
amazing.
There are a lot of stones that I think are going to be close enough. Like if I get slate colored mortar, there isn't much schist or slate where that won't be close enough, That's
amazing. I'm just going to tell you what, I am just so amazed at what you do. I think it's great. I was so honored when you said that you were going to come on the show. And before I sign off tonight, I have to thank Kim S. from It's a Good Night for a Murder podcast. I heard you on her show and I thought you were phenomenal. I really thought it was a great show. And I said, and I wrote to her and I said, would it be okay if I poached one of your guests? And she was, oh, please go ahead. And it was so great when you said yes. And I'm going to be honest with you, Rachel, I was kind of afraid to write to you because of, my content is a little bit more paranormal and everything. So it was so wonderful that you said yes to it.
Well, Tim, can I give you an admission? So I love the topic of the paranormal. I think people make an assumption about me because I'm so technical and matter of fact, but every time, I've never admitted this to anybody publicly, every time I repair a gravestone, I imagine that when I die, that person is going to meet me. And that is thousands of people at this point. And they're going to say, hey, I'm Mehitable. Hey, I'm Xenophin. I'm Thomasine. I'm, wow. I feel like there's.
I love that.
Yeah, and it's half fantasy. It's half fantasy, but I love the idea of being greeted after death by all of these people and getting to see their faces and, getting to see their personalities and maybe hearing their negative feedback.
I don't think you're going to get any negative feedback because let me tell you, speaking as a medium, as someone who has kind of grown up in that society, all I can tell you is one of the big things that comes through a lot. Thank you for taking care of the grave. That comes through a lot, because it's like, I have to ask that person, are you the person who takes care of the graves or whatever? And that's
Yeah.
the truth. And that's what comes through a lot of times. And a lot of times people stop and they look at me and they go, how the hell did you know that? Or yeah, I've got their remains, in my curio cabinet with, the rest of the family, and we're all going to be buried together. Yeah. I think that's great. I think that's
Oh, Tim, I was getting my, if we have a minute, I was getting my tarot cards read at a fair. Like, don't let me fool you. I have dowsing rods, I have tarot cards. And if you get close enough to me, I'm going to start sending you your card for the day.
I'm
Like,
there. I'm taking.
I'm from Salem. Don't let me fool you. So I was at this getting my tarot cards read, and the lady said, there's a spirit near you, and it's an old man. And I'm like, oh, come on. That describes 40% of the gravestones. And she said, no, an old man. And she looked at me like I was crazy, like I should know what she was talking about. And the very last gravestone I had repaired that day was for a 103-year-old man who was a doctor in
Wow.
Rowley. And it was notable that he was 103 years old. Like, it's all I talked about all day. And I was like, oh, yeah, an old man. Yeah, you're right. He
Well,
might be around.
but, I'm just going to tell you, my belief system is this: we attract. Our vibrations attract. Thoughts are things.
Yeah, I
Everything
attract old
becomes.
men.
I find that hard to believe. Okay, I'm just going to tell you that right now. Anyway, at least 100-year-old men.
103-year-old men. They're just
That's
always
funny.
around me.
That's funny. That's so
Anyway,
cute. That's cute.
maybe
But
we let's have a conversation another day about the paranormal, because I'm not shut off to it. I love the
well,
idea
no,
that you
no,
invited me.
and I was gonna, what? One of the big things that a lot of people wanted me to ask you was about the creepy things, and I always looked at, and I kind of, this was my response.
Yeah.
I've never been afraid of the live or the dead. It's the
Yeah.
living that always kind of worried about me, made me worried, and it's always like, the meth head or the crackhead that's in the back of the cemetery,
Mm,
or the guy drinking Mad Dog in the corner, that worries me. But believe me,
yeah.
everything else does not worry me at
Yeah.
all.
I know. I've seen some stuff. I
Well,
know.
that's but would you come back on? Because I love talking to you about this subject, and I think it's just it's to me it's so interesting and so refreshing. And next time you come on, we'll talk about the paranormal. How's that?
Yeah, let's do
I'll promise
that.
that.
Yeah, I'm
That's
into it. I'll bring out my rods.
You came to the right place.
All
You came to the right place.
right, I'm
I've got
in.
I've got everything from bobbers to aura meters and L rods, Y rods. I got everything in the all in between too. So
I love
yes,
it.
yes, it's all part and parcel of the fun that we are. That's
Yeah.
what it is. Rachel, tell everybody how they can get a hold of you.
So I'm most active on Instagram, but I also have Facebook and TikTok to a lesser degree.
Mm-hmm.
You can email me at epicpreservation@gmail.com, but I would say Instagram is really my jam because it's so visual and I can share more, and I never stop talking on Instagram. So you can message me there.
That's great. Rach, thank you so much. I'm so honored that you took the time to come on my show. I really am. I know everybody really loved everything. It was a great show. Stick around so I can thank you properly off the air.
All right. Thanks, Tim. And thanks everyone who's watching.
Thank you so much. Guys, Rachel Meyer is I told you, I warned you, she was a true delight. She was a true delight. I warned you guys right up in front. So interesting. So informative. This is something that, again, everybody should really get a handle on. I believe that we should honor those that have passed, our ancestors, so that when we pass, we're able to go and be able to say to them, we love you. Thank you for everything you've done. Thank you for putting me here where I am today. And just a quick note on volunteerism. A lot of people ask me, well, I don't understand why you volunteer. Well, I like to volunteer because it's not just so much just giving back, but it's a lot of fun. And when I first started volunteering, the first thing that everybody thinks about is soup kitchens and stuff and I am just not that type of guy. I'm sorry. I am terrible at like spooning out potatoes. That's just not me. But I was able to go and do things that I really loved, and I thought they were very important. And that was like not-for-profit production work that we did, and all sorts of stuff, and just raising money for preservation and different causes, and do something that means something to you. Because at the end of the day, you can say to yourself, I made a difference somewhere. And remember one thing: when you make a difference, when you think about that concept, it's not a big concept. You don't have to go and you make the earth shake. It's just a little thing. So, and you go and you just build on little tiny things that you do, and it makes a difference. So guys, hey, I got to thank you guys for sharing your Tuesday nights with me, and I love it. And again, all I'm going to say is I'll see you next week. And it's the Black Cat Lounge. I'm Tim Shaw, and you're here where the elite meet, next to the dumpster transfer station. What else can I tell you? Ciao, babies. I love each and every one of you. See you next week. Be good. Bye-bye.